Hello to everyone. Running a little late this week on the video instead of Thursday, Friday morning, bringing you 5 games, 5 questions here on Southern Sports Focus. So let's get right to it, shall we? Question number 1, will the Auburn offensive line actually show up? Dead last in the nation in sacks allowed per game, 14 allowed in SEC play, only averaging around 52 yards per game rushing versus conference opponents. Add to numerous false starts, holding penalties. The O-line is a huge reason why the Tigers are dead last in the SEC in total offense. The good news is that they are back home this week at Jordan-Hare. The bad news, they face a team that they haven't beaten since 2017, the Georgia Bulldogs. With 8 in a row, 17 of the last 20, the Deep South's oldest rivalry has been all dog. And while the Georgia defense hasn't been as dominant as we might used to be seeing, and they don't get into the offensive backfield much, they are still a solid group that defends the run well, and they are tied for first in the conference in opponents' red zone conversions. If Auburn can establish the run and keep Jackson Arnold upright, they have a good shot at an upset. But if not, it'll be dogs on top for the 9th year in a row. Question number 2 is simply, will Arch Manning survive? Now look, I know the question everyone is asking about is, will John Mateer play? He's officially listed as probable as the latest availability report. But whether it's him or Michael Hawkins, it might not matter. Why? Because Oklahoma has the best pass rush in the country. They are a nightmare for opposing quarterbacks. And the Texas offensive line, they've just been okay protecting Manning overall. Last week versus Florida, they were really bad. They gave up 6 sacks. How good are the Sooners at getting to the quarterback? They're getting a sack on 15% of pass plays. That is first in the FBS. So whether it's Mateer, Hawkins, or some random guy pulled from the stands, if the Sooners get to Manning at their usual clip, combined with the struggles that he's had, it's going to be a long day for the Texas offense and probably a bad one for Longhorn Nation. Our next question, is there a college football elimination game tonight in Denton, Texas? How big is the game tonight between 24th ranked South Florida and undefeated North Texas? Well, the university has canceled the classes in anticipation of the matchup and is expected to be the highest attended home game in the University of North Texas history, and it could be a good one. The Mean Green lead the American Conference in both scoring offense, their 3rd in total defense. They are playing well on both sides of the ball. South Florida, while not quite as impressive on the stat sheet, they have been very good in both phases as well, as Coach Alex Golesh continues to build USF into one of those G5 programs that Power League teams are wary to schedule. With games versus Florida and Miami, the Bulls are a bit more battle-tested than the Mean Green, but under those Friday night lights, the North Texas crowd in Denton will be hyped. And for the winner, a leg up in the American Conference race, and the loser, possibly all but eliminated from that race. Number 3, our next question, can Missouri secondary keep up with Bama's passing attack? Now, you might look at the fact that Missouri's 3rd in the SEC in passing defense and think, it seemed like a pretty good matchup. But while the Tigers are 5-0, 3 of those wins, FCS Central Arkansas, Louisiana, and 0-5 UMass. Take out those games and look at versus Power 4 teams so far. The passing yards per game goes from a little over 130 to just over 262. And one of those games versus South Carolina was a team that is 14th currently in the SEC in passing yards per game. In other words, Mizzou faces a tough challenge against Ty Simpson and his receiving targets that are averaging over 325 yards per game and has the top passing attack in the league in terms of passer rating. In their worst effort versus South Carolina, Eli Drinkwitz publicly ripped his secondary, saying, "This is getting ridiculous, how porous our pass defense is." Since those comments, we've seen Mizzou face UMass, and they've had an off week. So who knows if those problems have been corrected. But if not, especially if the Tigers can't get pressure, they may not be able to keep up for 4 quarters with the Tide. And our last question, can South Carolina possibly find an offensive rhythm in Baton Rouge? To some, one of the more disappointing teams this season has been South Carolina. Not to me personally, because I expected this, but hey, that's another topic for another day. What was supposed to be a team that could be a playoff threat is now 1-2 in SEC play and 3-2 overall. The biggest issue, the offense is not nearly as good as they were hyped. Dead last in the league in total offense, rushing offense, and 14th in scoring. Nick Harbor, the sophomore wideout, who at 6'5" with blazing speed was supposed to be a matchup nightmare through 5 games, 11 catches. Now, when he has gotten the ball, it's usually for big plays, averaging over 20 yards a catch. but 2.2 receptions per game, that is not going to cut it. Consistency has been missing. In fact, for the season, no one on that team has reached the 20 reception mark yet. Lenora Sellers only has had 4 touchdown passes and 1 rushing TD, and the supposed dual threat quarterback is averaging less than 20 yards per game on the ground. Nothing has really worked well for this offense. And now to avoid going to 1-3 in SEC play and be pretty much eliminated from the SEC and playoff race in mid-October, they got to go to Baton Rouge at night to face an LSU team that, while it has its own issues offensively, they have produced a good defensive effort, only allowing around 12 points per game. Facing a pretty stout defense with that noise, South Carolina is going to have to not only make some big pass plays, which admittedly they've shown that they can do at times, but also do something they have not done at all. Bring some balance and consistency to that offensive game plan. So those are my 5 games, 5 questions of the week. What do you think? Let me know, and have a good day, all.